All right, so let's
Yeah.
let's try and unpack this. If you just look around at, modern software, the landscape, it's just screens and features are multiplying. It feels like an exponential rate.
Oh, absolutely. Every single app, every dashboard, every tool you use, it just adds another layer.
And I think our job, especially if you're in product, isn't just to ship more features anymore. The real mission is to ship clear features.
Yeah.
Features that don't make users just stop and squint and have to really think about what they're doing.
That's the moment.
Yeah.
That hesitation, that little bit of friction, that's where your user satisfaction just tanks.
Yep.
And it's where business goals fail. If a user's confused, they're gone. They abandon the task.
Right.
So what we're doing in this deep dive is we're basically pulling together all these expert insights, these foundational frameworks.
Yeah.
And it's all custom tailored for you, the product manager. And we're focusing on one thing, making the user experience, the UX, crystal clear.
Yeah, we're giving you the shortcut. We've pulled together the vocabulary, the frameworks, the checklists that you really need to ensure you have a quality UX. Even if you've never, touched Figma or Photoshop in your life, the whole mission today is about this philosophy of clarity first.
And to really start, we have to define two core concepts that we're going to lean on through this whole thing, usability and heuristics. So usability is just how effectively, how efficiently, and how satisfied a user is when they're trying to achieve a goal in your system. It's the measure of success, really.
And heuristics, what's the simple way to think about those?
Heuristics are the high-level design principles. They're the rules of thumb. They're not strict, legalistic laws of design. They're more like universally accepted checks that point you in the right direction.
Okay, so it's like,
Yeah.
I think of them as the unwritten rules, like a social interaction. You don't have a rule book that says, don't stare at someone while they're talking, but it's a social heuristic that just makes everything go smoothly.
That's a perfect analogy. And these UX rules, they prevent those awkward digital interactions. The canonical set, the one that is the bedrock for any PM, comes from Jakob Nielsen and Rolf Mollick. It's the 10 usability heuristics.
And these frameworks are so important because as a PM, you have to think strategically about UX. It's not just about pretty colors.
Not at all. UX quality isn't aesthetics. It's a direct operational lever. High clarity, good usability that impacts your conversion rates, your user retention.
Then the big one.
And the big one, the number of support tickets your team has to field. Investing in clarity is, at the end of the day, investing in the bottom line.
Right. So, okay, let's build this foundation. Let's build these quality checks that make sure every product decision we make is led by that goal of clarity. All right, we're diving into the details now. And as we said, usability heuristics are those high-level principles. But it's not just about, checking a box on a list. It's about adopting a philosophy.
Exactly. And that philosophy, which you see championed by companies like Intercom, is clarity first. It's this ruthless commitment to making the purpose of a screen the most important information and what the user should do next.
Yeah.
Making it all instantly obvious.
Instantly.
If it takes any real mental energy to figure out the screen, the design has already failed.
I have to ask, though, because as a PM, I'm always thinking about shipping velocity. Isn't demanding instantaneous clarity a little, a recipe for analysis paralysis?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just have to get it out the door.
That's a really fair challenge, but the source material we're looking at argues the exact opposite. It says clarity is velocity, because if you build a feature that users can't figure out, you have zero velocity. You get zero adoption.
Ah, okay.
So the mindset shift for a PM is profound. If you find a clarity problem in a flow you already have, maybe you do a heuristic audit, you have to prioritize fixing that over adding a new feature, because fixing that unlocks the usage of features you've already paid to build. Clarity becomes an accelerator for existing value.
That completely reframes it. Okay, so it's not a design luxury. It's a necessary condition for success. And the sources give us a simple checklist for this, right? The 4 clarity questions.
Yes, and if the user can't quickly, almost subconsciously answer these 4 questions, you have an urgent clarity debt you need to pay down.
Okay, number 1. Where exactly am I in the application? So if your navigation, your breadcrumbs, if they're confusing, the user's just lost from the get-go.
Immediately disoriented. Number 2, what specific actions can I perform on the screen? Your buttons, your links, they have to scream, "Click me," and tell you what they do.
3, based on my goal, what should I do next? This is all about having a clear primary call to action, right? Making the main path just obvious.
It is. And finally, 4, what precise outcome will result if I execute that action? This is all about predictability. If I click quick delete, am I deleting everything? Or just this one little thing the system has to tell me?
And those 4 questions, they really just distill the entire 10 heuristic framework, don't they?
They're the essence of it. So let's dive into the 10 now, and we'll connect each one back to what a PM actually has to do to maintain that clarity-first mindset. #tag deep dive into Nielsen's 10 heuristics, connecting them to clarity. Okay, we'll start with number 1. Visibility of system status. The system has to consistently keep users informed about what's happening. The feedback needs to be clear, timely, and appropriate.
The clarity first angle here is all about reducing user anxiety. I mean, if I click a save button and for 3 seconds, nothing happens.
Wait here.
I'm going to click it again, and then I've probably created a bunch of errors.
Exactly. So the PM has to insist on that immediate feedback.
And the classic examples are simple, but they're so effective. Showing a filed upload progress bar with a percentage or a loading spitter that actually says saving your changes instead of just the spinning icon.
That context is everything. If you walk away for a minute and come back, you know exactly what state the system is in. It's also critical if you have, say, API latency. If a big report takes 10 seconds to generate, tell the user.
Right. We're processing a request. This usually takes 5-10 seconds. Or even, we'll email you when it's ready.
A silent system feels like a broken system.
Okay, next up. Match between the system and the real world. This is about using language, icons, ordering that. It matches how the user thinks about the world, not how your company is structured.
Jargon is the enemy of clarity. Full stop. There's a great example from the source material about naming. If your users are marketers, they talk about campaigns and audiences. If your database calls them job artifacts and segment tags, and you put that in the UI, you've created a massive clarity failure.
So the PM's job is to just ruthlessly audit the language.
Yes, and validate those names against how customers actually talk about their jobs.
Oh, I remember this horrible product where they called the billing page the financial ledger abstraction. It took me 3 support calls to figure out that's where I updated my credit card.
See, it's a disaster. And this also applies to visual metaphors. The trash can for delete, the magnifying glass for search, the expected flow of a shopping cart. Basket, then delivery, then payment.
Anytime you deviate from that, you're forcing the user to stop and learn a new system.
Yeah.
And that just violates clarity.
Our third heuristic is user control and freedom. Users have to feel like they are driving the car, not just riding in the back seat. This means you have to let them easily undo, redo, and cancel actions.
The confidence factor here is just massive.
Yeah.
People are so much more likely to explore a feature if they know they can't permanently break things.
Absolutely.
So as a PM, you have to insist on undo capabilities for anything that's non-trivial or destructive, deleting content, archiving a project.
Changing a core setting.
Yeah. It just directly feeds into user empowerment. I mean, sometimes the most important button on a modal is the cancel button, even if it feels functionally useless to an engineer.
And if an action is truly destructive, the system has to give you a 2-step confirmation and frame it as a question. Are you sure you want to permanently delete these 1,000 records? This action cannot be undone.
Okay, moving to number 4, consistency and standards. So similar things have to look and behave similarly everywhere. And we have to follow established conventions, both inside our product and, in the wider world.
Inconsistency is the #1 cause of cognitive burnout for a user. If links are blue and underlined over here, but they're green and bold over there, the user has to constantly relearn what a link even is.
So the PM action is just continuous auditing. Before you approve a new design pattern, you have to ask, does something like this already exist in our design system? Can we reuse that little cog icon for settings? Or are we inventing some new abstract symbol for no reason?
That's the question.
But wait, doesn't that risk making the product kind of bland? Or just stifling innovation? If every new feature has to strictly follow every old pattern, how does a product ever evolve?
That is the PM trade-off calculus. That's the job. Consistency is king for utility and familiarity, the core stuff. You have to maintain consistency in your navigation, your primary buttons, your core icons. But where you find freedom is maybe in content presentation or a new interaction model that solves a problem better than the old way. But that deviation has to be a deliberate, tested choice, not an accident because 2 teams didn't talk to each other.
Okay, so the standard is the default, and clarity has to be the driver for any change.
Exactly.
Okay, number 5, error prevention. Designing to reduce the chance of mistakes in the first place and catching issues early.
This is all about designing guardrails. So PM should be focused on eliminating common error states entirely. If a date field needs a specific format, just use a date picker instead of a text box.
Right.
If a user needs to enter a unique name, validate it in line before they even click submit.
And the PM's choice here is so critical, especially around prioritizing safer defaults. I love the example of defaulting to the safer option. If you're building an email tool, the main button should not be send to all customers.
No, it should be send test email.
Right. And only after you confirm that test should the final, destructive button be enabled. Maybe it's even hidden behind a second confirmation. That one design choice saves so many support headaches.
And customer trust. Okay, heuristic 6. Recognition rather than recall. Minimize the user's memory load. Make options, objects, actions visible. Don't make the user remember something from a previous screen.
Oh, this one gets missed all the time in complex software. If I'm looking at my current usage, I shouldn't have to navigate back to the settings page just to check my plan limits.
Exactly. The key info, you have used 80% of your 10 GB limit, should be right there, in context where you're doing the task.
So things like showing recently used items in a drop-down or using clear labels like download invoice instead of some ambiguous icon that I have to remember what it means.
Yes. Okay, 7. Flexibility and efficiency of use. You have to design for novices who need clarity, but also for experts who need accelerators.
So clarity has to equal efficiency. The main workflow, the happy path, it should be obvious and simple for everyone. But for your power users, the people doing the same 50 actions every day, you need those shortcuts. Keyboard shortcuts, custom dashboards, advanced filters.
And this heuristic involves a big PM trade-off. You might spend a whole sprint building a keyboard command palette, Control K, that only 10% of your users will ever find. But if those 10% are your highest value power users, that investment in their efficiency is strategically vital for keeping them. The PM's job is to make sure those advanced features are tucked away neatly behind something like advanced settings so they don't clutter the path for the novice, which upholds heuristic 8.
Which brings us right to it. Number 8, aesthetic and minimalist design. Avoid irrelevant stuff. Maximize the signal-to-noise ratio.
Every extra piece of information, every decorative icon, every unnecessary line of text, it's all noise. It's competing with the signal, the information the user actually needs to get their job done. The PM has to be ruthless here. You should constantly be asking, if we remove this, does the user's ability to complete their task go down? If the answer is no, get rid of it, or at least hide it by default.
This feels especially true for high-stakes flows. If I'm filing my taxes or making a huge bank transfer, I do not want a decorative seasonal banner on that screen. I want clarity and precision.
That's a perfect example, and this is where microcopy comes in, using short, precise text instead of flowery paragraphs.
All right, number 9, a critical one. Help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. Your error messages have to be in plain language, they have to point out the problem, and they have to suggest a solution.
Vague error messages are anxiety touchpoints. The classic failure is error 500, something went wrong.
The worst. It gives me no information. What happened? Why did it fail? What do I do now? A good error message has to answer all 3 of those.
Think about the difference. Something went wrong versus we can't process your order because the delivery address is a P.O. box, which isn't valid for expedited shipping. Please change to a physical address or select standard shipping.
One is a dead end, the other is a helpful guide. And that clarity stops the user from immediately giving up and opening a support ticket, which saves the business money.
And finally, number 10, help and documentation. Provide accessible help for complex or infrequent tasks.
We want the UI to be self-explanatory, but let's be real, enterprise software is complex. So the goal here is balance. Instead of just relying on a separate knowledge base that the user has to go find.
The PM should be pushing for light, contextual help, like those little question mark tooltips next to a technical field that give you a quick definition. It keeps the user in the flow.
So if we connect all 10 of these back to a bigger strategy, you look at Intercom's insight on information architecture, or IA.
Right. They realize that confusing navigation often comes from an IA built around internal teams, a marketing team section, a sales team section.
Instead of the user's goals.
Instead of the user's goals like manage my subscriptions or send messages. Achieving clarity sometimes means completely restructuring your features around the user's jobs to be done.
And a strategic PM will prioritize that IA overhaul, which is not glamorous work over a shiny new feature, because it improves the usability of the entire product you already have. That's it. Okay, so we've set the standards for what a good, clear screen looks like using the heuristics. But the user experience is almost never just one screen.
No, it's a journey.
So now we have to move into the second part of the PM toolkit, structuring that journey with wireframes and flows.
And these tools, They're born in the discovery and definition phases. This is way before you commit to high-fidelity design or any engineering. They are thinking tools. They're designed to clarify requirements and get everyone on the same page to prevent expensive rework later.
Let's get really clear on the three main artifacts a PM needs to master here: wireframes, user flows, and wire flows.
Okay. Wireframes are the structural blueprints for a single screen. They're low-fidelity lo-fi. We're talking boxes, simple shapes, placeholder text. They only answer the question, what content and what functional elements go where?
And they purposely leave out all the visual polish. No brand colors, no perfect fonts.
Right, and to keep the focus purely on hierarchy and structure.
Okay, and the user flow or task flow.
That shows the sequence. It's an abstract diagram, like a simplified flowchart with boxes and arrows. It shows the steps and decision points a user takes to get something done. For example, user initiates a password reset, and it shows all the validation steps to get to success.
And then the wire flow is the hybrid of the two.
It is. NN defines it as the design specification format for complex interactions. It combines the simplified screen layout of the wireframe with the flow arrows of the task flow.
But why do we need that hybrid? Can't we just use flowcharts?
Flowcharts are great for simple decisions, but they really struggle with complexity that spans multiple distinct screens. If you're building a multi-step checkout with conditional logic, if the user selects international shipping, then show the customs declaration field, you have to see both the screen structure and the movement between screens.
Ah, so the wire flow makes that complex journey tangible. It minimizes misinterpretation when you hand it off.
Exactly.
That distinction is super helpful. And the power of keeping these tools low fidelity, especially early on, seems central to that whole discovery philosophy.
Oh, it's crucial. Lo-fi artifacts are fast to make and, more importantly, fast to throw away. This encourages the team to explore 4 or 5 wildly different approaches. You just can't do that if you start with high-fidelity design.
And it solves that bike shedding problem. If I show stakeholders a wireframe with gray boxes, they focus on the functional steps. If I show them a beautifully rendered screen with our company's blue,
The conversation immediately goes to, I don't like that shade of blue, or why is the font size 14 when it should be 16?
right? Lo-fi keeps the conversation anchored to structure and clarity.
And the focus stays on, does this flow answer the 4 clarity questions? Even a lo-fi wireframe has to communicate the screen title, the key content blocks, the primary actions, and, this is important, annotations for non-visual behavior, like error states or disabled button logic.
Okay, let's talk process. PMs need to map 2 flows, the current, or as-is, and the proposed, the to-be. And mapping that as-is flow is often painful, but essential.
It is mandatory. It forces everyone to acknowledge reality. Too often, teams just operate on the happy path assumption and they ignore all the messy detours. The as-is map documents the true, complex, often broken experience.
So what inputs do you use to map that messy reality? Where does the data come from?
A good as-is map is synthesized from data. You look at your analytics to find the big drop-off points in your funnels. You use customer interview transcripts to find phrases like, I got stuck when, and you bring in all the issues you found from your heuristic evaluations.
And the process is, you define a specific goal, like a new subscriber sets up their first project. You list the steps you think they take, and then, and this is the crucial part, you add all the ugly branches and loops.
Yes, the happy path is easy. Step 1, step 2, success. The real-world path includes the loop where the user forgets a required field and has to re-enter data, the redirect to a third party for authentication. The system constraints, where the user has to wait 30 seconds for something to load.
And you have to annotate those pain points right on the diagram.
Right on the diagram, 30% drop-off observed here with a link to the analytics. Or users complain about confusing language here, and you cite the heuristic 2 failure.
That as-is map becomes a powerful political tool then, doesn't it? It's not just documentation. It's the evidence you use to convince stakeholders that, hey, maybe this IA work should be prioritized over that shiny new feature. It shows the cost of the current confusion.
Absolutely. And once you have that baseline, you can move to the proposed or to-be flow. You start with the problems you found, that huge drop-off at account creation, and you apply heuristics like error prevention to simplify it.
So you might combine those 2 steps into one with inline validation. Or you might get rid of a mandatory field by using a smarter default.
And the proposed flow should also be annotated, noting what's new, what your assumptions are. We assume combining these steps will reduce drop-off by 15% and any open questions you have for the design team.
So by choosing the right fidelity at the right time, a paper sketch for early ideas, a wire flow in Figma once the structure is solid, The PM makes sure the whole structure is sound and validated before designers spend any time on visual polish. The flow becomes the living specification. So we've structured the journey, we set the standard for the screens, but the user doesn't interact with boxes and arrows. They interact with words. We have to talk about microcopy, the unsung hero of product clarity.
It really is. Microcopy is all that functional text, the button labels, the form instructions, the empty state messages, that crucial error text. It's small, but its impact on usability is just disproportionately huge.
Strong microcopy reduces confusion, it builds confidence, and critically, it reduces support tickets because it answers questions before they're asked.
And on the flip side, weak or confusing copy is a primary cause of hesitation, error, and, cart abandonment. A vague button label makes the user pause, and that pause is often enough for them to just leave.
So let's look deeper into Intercom's principles for clear UX writing. Every PM reviewing a design needs to have these in their head.
Okay, first one, A, be clear, not clever. This is probably the hardest one for creative teams to follow. Users are there to get a job done, not to be entertained. If a button upgrades a plan, it should say upgrade plan.
Not take the red pill or let's level up this journey.
Exactly. The moment you introduce ambiguity or you make the user interpret something, you have failed the clarity first test. B is write for the moment. The copy has to be contextual. When a user's deleting something, the confirmation message has to acknowledge the gravity of that and the specific item they're deleting. It has to be relevant.
C, reduce cognitive load. This is all about simplifying grammar, cutting down those bureaucratic, complex sentences that sound like legal documents.
Instead of kindly note that in order to facilitate your request, we require prior validation of your unique credentials. Just say, verify your email to continue.
Simple, direct, actionable.
D, prioritize scannability. Interfaces are scanned, not read. So use short sentences, use bullet points, and start with strong verbs. If you have a long stream of nouns, the user's eye is just going to glide right over it.
And E, structure content around user intent. This means the copy needs to explain actions in terms of the user's goal, not the system's technical process.
So if the system is running a security audit, the message should focus on why the user is seeing a delay. We are confirming your details for security, not executing system security script 4.2b.
Nobody cares about script 4.2b.
Nobody. And these principles all guide us toward actionable copy tactics. Use action-first language verbs like create, add, upload, stick to plain English, and always provide that instant context. What, why, and what next?
I found the source materials advice on tone really fascinating.
Yeah.
PMs have to make sure the tone is used strategically, and especially avoid trying to be funny or delightful in high-stakes flows, payments, critical errors, account deletion.
Oh, absolutely. Humor is great for onboarding or for a fun empty state. But when the user is trying to delete their profile or finalize a huge financial transaction, they demand certainty. They demand reliability and seriousness. A joke in an error message during checkout just destroys trust instantly.
Speaking of errors, let's go back to Heuristic 9. The error message is the ultimate clarity touchpoint. How does a PM make sure that errors are actionable?
They ensure the message specifies the field that failed, the reason for the failure, and the fix. A vague message like invalid input is useless. A great message is, the password must contain at least one capital letter and one number. That allows immediate self-correction.
Right.
And PMs also have to make sure the copy handles transient errors like the network timed out. We will auto-retry in 10 seconds, differently from validation errors like this field can't be empty.
So if the PM isn't the UX writer, what's their actual tactical responsibility here?
The PM is the clarity gatekeeper. They have to make sure the copy aligns with the product goals, and critically, they have to prioritize copy improvements in the backlog. If your analytics show that 20% of users are hitting a vague error message, and your support tickets spike every time that error shows up, the PM has the data to justify prioritizing a copy editing sprint over a new feature.
So you identify the unclear messages during design review and flag them as Heuristic 2 or 9 failures.
Exactly. The PM quantifies the cost of confusion and drives investment toward clarity.
Our commitment to clarity, it has to be universal. And that leads us directly to accessibility, often abbreviated as A11Y. This isn't just about compliance, it's about good product design for people of all abilities.
It's a non-functional requirement that has to be baked in from the start. And it's often misunderstood as, designing for a niche group, but it genuinely improves the experience for everyone.
Like using captions in a noisy bar.
Or navigating a complex form with a temporary injury, like a broken arm. That's a temporary disability.
So what's the standard framework we need to operate within here?
Globally, the standard is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. Most organizations are aiming for WCAG 2.1 ABOLE compliance. And WCAG is structured around 4 core pillars, which are summarized by the acronym POUR.
Okay, let's spend some time on each of those 4 pillars and the PM's role in them. So P is for perceivable.
Perceivable means users have to be able to recognize information no matter how it's presented. This is where things like color contrast ratios are defined. WCAG mandates a minimum of 4.5 to 1 for normal text.
So for a PM, this means specifying requirements for alt text on all images and ensuring that no information relies only on color, like an error field needs a red border and an error icon or text.
Correct. O is for operable.
Operable.
This covers the user's ability to navigate and interact with the UI. The crucial requirement here is keyboard-only navigation. A PM has to mandate that everything, functional buttons, links, forms, is accessible and logically ordered using the tab key.
And for mobile, another key detail is making sure touch targets meet that minimum size, right? Usually 44 by 44 pixels. They're reliably tappable.
Yes.
I could just hear a designer arguing, but the keyboard focus outlines are ugly.
Yeah.
How does a PM handle that aesthetic tension?
The PM has to stand firm. Removing the focus outline is an accessibility violation that severely impacts users who can't use a mouse. The solution is to find a focus style that works with your design system, not to remove it. Operable also means giving users enough time, no rapidly expiring sessions or unexpected time limits without a warning.
Okay, U is for understandable.
This connects right back to heuristics 2 and 9, clarity and error recovery. Understandable means predictable, clear, and easy to grasp. This means using clear, permanent labels for all your form fields, not using placeholder text as a label because that vanishes when the user starts typing and screen readers often miss it.
So consistent navigation, plain language, less jargon.
All of it. And finally, R is for robust.
Robust.
Robustness ensures the content works across different user agents and assistive technologies, screen readers like NVDA or VoiceOver, voice control systems. This usually means ensuring developers are using semantic HTML, using a button element for a button, not just a styled div, and applying ARIA attributes correctly to explain what custom components do.
The business value here is just overwhelmingly strong beyond the obvious moral and legal reason.
No, it is. Beyond the legal risk, which can be devastating under the ADA in the U.S., accessibility increases your market reach. 15% of the global population has a disability. It also reduces support tickets because accessible designs are inherently more clear and predictable for everyone.
And the PM's insight on timing.
It is exponentially cheaper to build accessibility requirements into the initial design and development process than to try and retrofit them later. Trying to fix keyboard navigation after a feature has shipped is a massive multi-sprint project.
So the PM's role is tactical. The requirements have to be explicit.
Yes. They can't be vague. They should be written right into the user stories and acceptance criteria. For example, instead of the form works, you write, the form fields utilize proper label elements and are programmatically associated with their input fields.
Or all icons used to convey meaning must have corresponding visually hidden text.
Exactly that specific.
We should also flag the anti-patterns that PMs should just veto on site.
Besides removing focus outlines, PMs should be wary of designs that use infinite scrolling without clear navigation landmarks that violates operable, using low-contrast gray text that looks minimalist but fails perceivable, and any design that hides essential context like error messages until after the user has already submitted the form. These are clarity killers.
Okay, we have set our standards for clarity. We've defined the flows. Now, how do we confirm our assumptions are right before we write a single line of production code? We have to enter the critical phase of product discovery through prototyping.
And this is where we adopt the philosophy from the Silicon Valley Product Group, or SVPG. Product discovery is about building to learn. Delivery is about building to earn. Prototypes are the primary way we learn quickly and cheaply.
And a prototype is basically a question that needs an answer. And that question has to address at least one of SVPG's foundational framework points, the 4 big risks.
That is the core thesis. Before you build anything, you have to ask. 1. Value risk. Will users actually use it? And more importantly, will buyers pay for it?
2. Usability risk. Can they figure out how to use it without getting confused? Which ties right back to clarity first.
3. Feasibility risk. Can our engineers actually build this with the time, technology, and skills we have?
And 4. Viability risks. Does this work for the business? Thinking about legal, financial, ethical constraints.
So the choice of prototype fidelity is driven by which of those risks you're trying to mitigate. And fidelity, how close it is to the final product, has multiple dimensions.
Right, it's not just one thing.
It's not. We judge it on visual appearance, interaction depth, content realism, and functional breadth. Low fidelity sketches, paper wireframes is fast and cheap, and it's excellent for early conceptual value testing and just mapping out flows.
But the source material, which is heavily influenced by SVPD, seems to really favor high-fidelity prototypes for the later stages of discovery. Why the push for hi-fi when it takes more upfront effort?
For complex products, high fidelity is necessary for accurate testing. If you're testing an emotional response or user trust, say, in a payment flow, a lo-fi sketch just isn't going to give you realistic feedback. Hi-fi prototypes, the ones that look and feel like the finished product, are just far superior for realistic usability testing. They also force the team to confront all the details and the edge cases early, which means that once they're validated, they can actually double as the primary specification for the engineers, which reduces redundant documentation.
So the argument is the increased effort in design fidelity pays for itself by saving a massive amount in engineering rework and getting you more accurate test results.
That's it, exactly. And we also categorize prototypes by the risk they're meant to mitigate. So user prototypes are the common, hi-fi, clickable designs. You use those to test value and usability. They mimic the front-end experience, but they don't have a real database hooked up.
Then you have the feasibility or technical prototypes, which are often called spikes. Those mitigate the feasibility risk.
These are quick coding experiments done by engineers. They're testing things like, how fast is this API integration? What are the performance constraints of this database query? How good is the output of this machine learning model? They often have minimal or even no UI.
And then the highest fidelity test of all is the live data prototype.
This is a minimal but real, fully wired version of the product. And you often show it only to a small segment of your production users. This is where you prove viability and value with real money and real behavioral changes. You're measuring conversion uplift or adoption rates in a live environment.
So once you've built the prototype, running an effective test is crucial. It is not about giving a tour of your new feature to a friend.
No coaching, no leading questions. The key principles are recruit real target users, give them specific outcome-focused tasks like find the invoice from March and download it, and then you just observe. You document exactly where they pause, where they click incorrectly, or where they express confusion. Those are heuristic 9 failures in the wild. The goal is rapid learning, not a perfect presentation.
And prototypes also feed into internal alignment through the structured critique. This can't just be an open forum for everyone's personal preferences.
No, the critique is a focused meeting with the core team, the PM, the product designer, and the tech lead. And the PM's role is to act as the anchor. They start the session by stating the context. We're testing the checkout flow today. Our goal is to minimize usability risk and test our assumption that combining steps 2 and 3 reduces cognitive load.
And the structure of the feedback stops the bike shedding.
Yes. Using a framework like I wish, I wonder, directs the feedback toward actionable changes. If a stakeholder says, I don't like where that button is, the PM has to press them. I wonder what negative outcome you're worried about if the button stays there. Does it violate heuristic 3, user control? You have to anchor all feedback in user outcomes and evidence.
So what are the anti-patterns the PM has to aggressively guard against here?
2 big ones. First, confirmation bias discovery-only running tests that confirm what you already want to hear, or ignoring negative feedback. Second, the danger of stakeholders demanding you ship the prototype. A prototype is a learning tool. It lacks the security, the performance, the monitoring, the robust error handling that you need for production. The PM has to clearly distinguish between a validated design and a production-ready product.
All right. We've learned, we've iterated, we've validated the design with real users. We are now ready for the handoff to engineering. This is the moment where the PM transitions from discovery to delivery, and the goal is to ensure crystal clear clarity of intent through documentation.
And that clarity is solidified using acceptance criteria, or ACs. ACs are the critical link. They connect the high-level goals from the PRD and the visual intent from the prototype or the design files, and they link them directly to the specific user story or task ticket in Jira.
Let's get really clear on the definition. What exactly are acceptance criteria?
ACs are the explicit testable conditions that a user story must satisfy to be considered complete and ready to release. They focus entirely on the final outcome the user experiences, not on the underlying engineering method. We're defining the state where we will consider this story done when.
And the distinction between ACs And the definition of done, the DoD.
The definition of done is a universal team checklist. It's things like code reviewed, unit tests passed, documentation updated. ACs are unique to each individual user story. You have to meet both.
The source material gives a really strong definition of what makes AC crisp. They have to be verifiable by QA, focused on the outcome, unambiguous, atomic so, checking one condition per criterion, and crucially complete, covering functional needs, non-functional needs like accessibility, and every single edge case.
A vague AC like the page loads fast is useless. A crisp, testable AC is. The initial page load renders in under 2 seconds for 90% of requests over a 3G network. That links the UX need speed directly to a measurable metric.
We primarily rely on two formats for writing UX-heavy AC. There's the simple bullet rule-based format, which is great for simple constraints, like all mandatory fields must be clearly marked with an asterisk.
But for defining complex interactions and flows, PMs have to master the scenario-based given when then Gherkin format. This is the ultimate tool for clarity because it forces you to explicitly define the context, the action, and the result.
Let's apply Gherkin to a common flow, just to emphasize the clarity it provides. We'll use a slightly more complex login scenario that involves security.
Okay. Scenario. Successful two-factor authentication, 2FA setup. Given the user has successfully entered their password and chosen to enable 2FA. When they scan the QR code and enter a valid 6-digit code within the 60-second window, then they are redirected to the security settings page, and they see a non-dismissible success banner stating, two-factor authentication is now active.
That is so clean. Now, the real value of the PM in writing ACs is covering the negative paths, which are so often overlooked in the design. Let's use Gherkin to define a crucial failure state, connecting back to heuristic 1, system status, and heuristic 9, error recovery.
Let's use a payment transaction that has a system timeout.
Okay, scenario, payment failure, transient timeout.
Given the user has clicked Pay Now, but the Payment Gateway API fails to respond within the system timeout of, say, 10 seconds,
Yeah.
when the system times out, then the user remains on the payment screen and they see a clear, actionable message stating, we experienced a temporary network delay. Please check your email for a confirmation or try again in 1 minute. And the Event Payment Gateway timeout is logged with the transaction ID, and no duplicate charge attempt is made if the user clicks Pay Now again within 60 seconds.
Look at that. That single scenario defines the user experience, the system status visibility, the recovery path, and the necessary logging for the business. That's comprehensive QA baked right into the requirement.
It is.
Let's add one more, linking it to mobile and accessibility, operable, and robust.
Okay. Scenario. Mobile form field validation. Given a user is trying to input their phone number on a mobile device. When the user taps the phone number field, then the correct numeric virtual keyboard is displayed, and the touch target area for that field is 44 by 44 pixels or larger. And if the user enters non-numeric characters, an inline soft warning appears immediately.
That level of detail just guarantees quality in every environment. So before marking a story ready for dev, the PM needs that final handoff checklist. Are the criteria truly testable? Are they consistent with the PRD and the validated design? Have engineering and design both signed off that the AC is feasible and accurate?
And remember the anti-pattern. Do not use ACs to specify visual details like pixel sizes or font colors. That information belongs in the design system or the prototype annotation. ACs define what the system does, not how it looks. The focus is always on intent and outcome. #tag outro.
We have successfully completed the full PM/UX journey today, from auditing a single screen's quality all the way to guaranteeing implementation fidelity in production.
We started by adopting that strategic mindset of clarity first, using the 10 heuristics to audit every single touch point, from ensuring system status visibility to providing effective error recovery paths.
Then we learned how to structure complexity by mapping that as-is flow and designing improved to-be flows using lo-fi wireframes and wireflows.
We dove into the language of the interface, microcopy internalizing that lesson that we have to be clear, not clever, especially in those critical user moments.
And we built requirements around inclusivity and usability for everyone, mandating adherence to the WCAG POR principles, making sure accessibility is non-negotiable.
Finally, we integrated product discovery strategy, leveraging SVPG's 4 big risks: value, usability, feasibility, viability, to select and deploy the right prototypes. And we closed with the most powerful delivery tool, crafting crisp, scenario-based acceptance criteria like Gherkin to connect strategic intent directly to the implementation and guarantee quality across every crucial edge case.
The key takeaway for you, the learner, is that as a product manager, Your greatest influence over UX isn't visual design. It is your ability to rigorously demand clarity in the product's flows, in the messaging, and in the technical requirements.
Your tools, the frameworks, the critical conversations, the data-driven trade-offs, and those highly specific testable acceptance criteria, they transform the subjective concept of good design into measurable, deliverable quality.
So we'll leave you with this final provocative thought, one that really challenges the traditional documentation process. The source material stressed that a thoroughly tested, validated, high-fidelity prototype can serve as the primary visual specification for engineers. So if that validated prototype is the definitive answer to the user experience, does the product requirements document, the PRD, still need to be a detailed, long document outlining every single UI state?
Or is the PRD's real modern value now almost exclusively focused on documenting the problem, the business context, and the non-negotiable Gherkin acceptance criteria that govern success, failure, and all those non-functional requirements like accessibility and performance?
Think about the weight of documentation you could safely eliminate by leaning entirely into validated prototypes and highly focused conversational ACs as the source of truth. How might that accelerate your delivery without sacrificing quality? Something to mull over as you start applying the clarity-first mindset to your next challenge.